Good morning and welcome back to the Macedon Ranger's Voice Talking with Jazz. I'm so glad you're here. Are you subscribed? Have you subscribed? Do you know anybody who has subscribed on YouTube? It's a really good experience. In fact, I only set up the YouTube channel because my mum wouldn't subscribe on Facebook. Which goes to show you, some people have sense. And I always think my mum has sense. That's why we're going to talk about raising your children. Well, just one aspect of it, because there's so many aspects of it, I can't really deal with them all in one video. This story starts many, many, many years ago, when I met the Nut Princess. Now, it was a fancy dress party in Brunswick, which we used to organise occasionally. Okay, most Friday nights, but this was a kind of a special one. I don't know what the special occasion was. It might have been the end of exams. Needless to say, we all turned up in our costumes. And I met the Nut Princess. Now, the Nut Princess was, as one would expect, dressed as royalty. She was dressed as Cleopatra. And she looked fantastic. She was the best Cleopatra I have ever seen. I don't even remember what my costume was. I'd probably just put a bandana around and said I'm a cowboy, something stupid like that. And I was like, oh my God. Well, she didn't call herself the Nut Princess until we started a conversation. And I think I might have even been the first person to call her the Nut Princess. So she was the Nut Princess because she was the heir to the Royal Nut Empire. Okay, so if you don't know, there's a place in Brunswick that sells nuts called Royal Nuts. I remember going there once and buying nuts. And yes, they have a lot of nuts. They have every kind of nut. And it was a kind of thing where I said, oh, are these special for Christmas? And the guy behind the counter said, oh, Christmas, Easter, Hanukkah, whatever, any halal occasion, whatever, you just buy them. They don't care. It was one of those multicultural situations which was, let's get back to the Nut Princess, because I'm sure that's what you're all thinking about, right? And anyway, so there she was, looking like, as I said, Cleopatra, and I went up to her and I talked to her, and I gave her my cowboy impersonation, and then she sort of gave me this kind of story about being heir to the Royal Nut Factory, or she kind of put it more like I work there, and I said, oh, that's good. Is it fun, selling nuts? She said, I work in the office. My dad owns a business, and so I then immediately leaped on the idea that she was the Nut Princess, right? And it was perfectly above board and all that, because and she was like had this Middle Eastern heritage, and that's why the whole costume worked so well. And she really did look like Cleopatra. I mean, I can tell you right now, she was Cleopatra as far as I was concerned. She said, and this was again completely above board, she said, yes, I work at the nut factory. Smell my hair, it smells like nuts. And sure enough, I smelt it, and yes, it smelt like nuts. Mostly cashews, which I thought was quite nice. Anyway, she left quite an impression on my mind. And it wasn't until about maybe 30 years later that I thought again about the Nut Princess. Because there I was, trying to feed my children their dinner, and trying to expand their repertoire, because they were kind of more on a bread diet. It was bread, it was rice, it was potatoes, maybe with some tomato sauce, maybe sausages or something like that. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I was on some kind of thing. I literally tried everything. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and my dad said, well, having children, and he's had a lot of children, like I'm one of 5, right? And he said, well, you know, raising children is all about who can blackmail who the best. So is the child going to blackmail you? Like, well, I'm not going to eat anything. Or are you going to be able to blackmail the child? Like, well, if you don't eat your dinner, you won't get to whatever, you know. So I see what he's saying, but he just put it in his harsh terms. He should know. He was a paediatrician, and, you know, that's what they do. They deal with children. So, yeah, the whole blackmail thing seemed to work. So they probably talked about this at their, you know, paediatrician school, how to get kids to do things. I don't know. Who knows? I've never asked him. I might ask him next time I see him, which will be in like 2025 when the whole, you know, Dictator Dan opens the gates on the New South Wales border. But anyway, let's move along. I know you want me to talk about Nut Princess. I want to talk about Nut Princess again, but there's no more Nut Princesses in this story. So let's just get back to blackmail and dinner time and mushrooms. So I've always tried to expand my children's repertoire in terms of their food. And mushrooms is kind of clearly a battleground. You know, pumpkins always one too. That was my one when I was a child. But we won't talk about that now. That comes in another story. There's some suspense for you. You can wait. You can ask me if I'm going to do the pumpkin story, okay? So we're having this battle over the mushrooms. And it's like, you know, could you eat your mushrooms? And my dearly beloved won't eat mushrooms, so I don't even know why I'm bothering, right? But it was just this sort of thing. Let's introduce, you know. Anyway, I then came up with what I thought was the perfect blackmail. I can tell you now it didn't work, so, you know, that just let's rule that right out. Because that's not what the story is about. It's not about the success of my blackmailing my children. Because I don't think it's ever actually worked. Or maybe it has worked and I just don't realise it. And I'm the one who's being blackmailed. I do seem to do whatever they tell me to do, so yeah, probably I have been blackmailed. But here we are with mushrooms, and I came up with this plan. It will at least a blackmail threat, and because it's really more about threats, because you can't really, you know, actually carry out the thing that whatever it is. Particularly this one, because it's almost impossible, right? So I asked my daughter, who was refusing to eat her mushrooms, which were sautéed very nicely with just a little bit of butter and thyme. How I like it, even a cracked pepper on the top, right? What would you do if you were dining at the table of the Mushroom King, sitting next to and or opposite the Mushroom Prince, who had just proposed to you? Would you eat mushrooms? Anyway, on that note, why don't you have a great day?